Hello, everybody. It's Lenny Murphy with another edition of the Greenbook Podcast. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day to spend it with myself and my guest. And today, I am joined by Matthew Powell, Managing Director of North America for B2B International. Matt, welcome.
Thank you, Lenny. Great to be here.
It's good to have you. Often, I end up talking to people that I know, and I look forward to times when I'm talking to somebody that I don't. And you and I had never met until just a few weeks ago.
Yep.
So who knows where this is going to go, right? Now, with that being said, obviously I can't give you a big introduction because I don't know all of your background. So why don't you tell our audience kind of your origin story? How did you wind up in this role? Give us that comic book origin.
Absolutely. Thanks, Lenny. Well, yeah, really, really pleased to be here. So I first started my career just over 20 years ago now. I joined B2B International straight out of university. I started in the phone unit in the Catty Centre there in Manchester in the UK. I remember my first project was interviewing buyers of corrugated boxes around the US. So in a matter of weeks, I became an expert on corrugated packaging and those kind of companies in the US. That kind of hooked me, I think. About a year later, joined the analyst team and then have been with the company ever since. So I moved down to London in 2011 to open our London office. Spent 10 years there. Had a quick pit stop in China at our Beijing office in 2008. And then 4 years ago, moved over to the US. So I'm speaking to you now from LA in California, and I head up our North American team here. 20 years, it's a long time. Every sort of 3 years or so, it felt like something transformative's happened, which has kind of kept things really interesting and exciting. The biggest one, I think, was 2018. We were acquired by Dentsu. So now our team sits within Merkle, one of Dentsu's main brands. And that was really exciting for me because I'm really passionate about the impacts that research can make. And at that point, we started working really closely with the creative strategists within Dentsu and the media teams and starting to develop ways in which we can develop research solutions that we've got a sort of standalone primary projects, but then also ties into the work that those teams are doing. So yes, here in LA now, that 20-year journey's brought me here.
I've got to say that's actually, even though you've been in the same place for 20 years, that's a very cool story nowadays because most folks don't do that. So to start in the phone room, work your way up, now Managing Director of North America. So I guess you're doing something right.
I hope so. Yeah.
So far, so good, huh? Well, you and I can relate. We talked about that when we did our kind of pre-call of my first job in research was managing a phone room. And yeah, it does hook you, doesn't it?
It does. And again, I think that's another reason why I'm sure it's the same with all researchers after 20 years. Every day is a school day, essentially. Every project you work on, you're learning something new, solving a new problem, you're designing something in a slightly different way. So yeah, it definitely keeps it interesting.
Well, and especially for B2B, right? My background was also, focused on B2B research for a long time. And I always thought it was the most interesting challenges. Even things as fundamental as just sample, right? We had to rethink that. Sometimes the relevant sample is 10 people, but that really is, that's it. And that is quantitative because the universe is only 20 people. So, so interesting. Well, let's talk about that. Because there may be this perception that B2B is a little more dry or technical, but I think obviously our shared experience is that's not the case. So how have you brought that focus on the human, on the importance of decision making within the business, and especially as you connected then into Merkle and Dentsu with this larger integration outside of the research component into actually strategy and execution? So give us a sense of what that's been like.
Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, it's that time in the phone unit is good context for this, I think, because those conversations that you have with people, using that example, buying corrugated boxes, that are used in factories. Doesn't sound very emotional. But when you're speaking to the person that's involved in that decision and you're hearing them talk about their day and the decisions that they have to make, the kind of risks that they have in choosing a new provider and the emotive impact that can have on them, you understand the human element of B2B decisions. So even from right back then, you understand that there's a human element to this. Obviously B2B is having a renaissance. It has been having a renaissance for the last few years, B2B marketing in general. And everyone's talking about emotion in B2B and connecting with individuals. It's not dry, it's not boring, it's actually pretty exciting. We, over the past, I guess maybe 10 years, have been doing our own thought leadership research to understand what drives decisions and the role of emotions. It started off as a small survey, I think in maybe like 2011, and now it is the biggest survey of B2B decision making globally. So this year, I think we've got 36,000 experiences that are measured over the last few years. And this year, it was the first time that we saw that personal factors actually fully outweigh the business decision-making drivers now. They've always been really important, and we've always seen that they can often be the make or break factors, the sort of emotive trust elements. But this year, it was the first, we measured 30 different attributes. It was the first time that those emotive attributes outweighed the professional buying attributes.
Now that's really interesting because grit is effectively a B2B survey, right? And it was always for like these better questions on buying decision making, right? The drivers, and it's all cheaper, faster, better quality, yada yada yada. But last year, for the first time, we saw trust emerge as the paramount consideration, rather than maybe fourth tier down. And my hypothesis was, we haven't tested this, but it's just my read, and maybe you can say whether I was right or wrong intuitively, is in a period of disruption and upheaval, especially now, right? Kind of all industries going through some level of disruption, having vendors, partners that you trust to support you effectively becomes more important than anything else. Even though they may be a little more expensive or slower, whatever these other parameters that they have to juggle in decision making. Was that what you saw in your study?
Yeah, trust is the number one driver that we've seen in that across industries. But yeah, I think that's a really good point with the grit survey. I mean, there's obviously a lot of factors that play into that. I think obviously at the moment there's been the issue with fraud in survey data, and people wanting to know they can have absolute trust in the data that they're putting in front of their organization and their C-suite. I was having a conversation yesterday, speaking to a partner who's got an AI solution, and we're talking about synthetic data and what the role of synthetic data is going to be. And one thing I know now, this will for sure change over time, but now, whenever we're presenting research findings, particularly to like C-suite level people within a client, the biggest thing they fixate on is the sample slide. It's like, have you spoken to exactly my customers or my prospects? And can I really trust that you've spoken to a human that is important to our business? So that's
and a human that actually is who they say they are.
Exactly. Yes. So yeah, I think that shows the importance of trust, and particularly big decisions are going to be made on research, and people have to really know that they can trust the data that they have and the insights that's delivering.
So we're recrafting the new grit survey. I can't speak to go out soon, imminently. And it's interesting. We did play a little bit with that concept of trust and disruption, and especially in the era of AI, with exploring what some dimensions that may be. And I think one of them also is one dimension of trust and reliability is help us separate the signal from the noise. There's lots of snake oil out there, right? We know, just if I'm a buyer, oh my God, there's a million new solutions that have emerged, like literally, right? So, and they're all probably pretty good because they seem to do the same things. They have different bells and whistles, but effectively they're leveraging AI to do different things to create efficiencies, and that's great. Um, but there's so much more than just the capability. There is the support, the understanding, the reliability components of that. So is that something that you're kind of factoring in these conversations that you're having as well with your clients as well as your vendors is excuse me, is understanding with those deeper dimensions of trust as we go through a period of transformation and innovation?
Absolutely. So we've always had like a suite of partners that we use who are incredible. And we know their strengths and the areas that some of them, for certain audiences, for example, there's a partner who will be great for IT decision makers. But if we're looking for, say, construction workers or chief financial officers, there will be very different partners that we use. So we always say, like, thinking of sort of three main filters in terms of data quality, just at a broader sense. You've got the partners that we're using and making sure that they can deliver great quality data. And there's obviously lots of different checks that go into that and work that those partners do to make sure that we're speaking to genuine people. That being the first filter. Then we've got like the screening questions to make sure we've got exactly the right kind of people in the survey who can talk knowledgeably about the complex business product that we're going to be researching. And then the third phase being just various different data quality checks, automated, different tools that we have, but always a human eye as well. Because we've seen this in the past where you think, wow, that's a juicy quote that we can see in this data and it looks fantastic. And then the more you dig into it, you realize this isn't a genuine quote. So I think it always needs that human eye to be able to do the final sense check in data.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you seen this change over the years in the mechanisms to engage B2B audiences? So for example, back in my rock opera days, right, the emergence of online research, B2B, and we were all hot and bothered to be able to sell everybody communities, in community panels.
Yeah.
That's the perfect thing, right? Why are you paying $100 per, every time we go to this population? Let's just spend $1 million up front and with us, and and build this ongoing group, which never particularly worked because we know all the challenges of engaging with B2B populations, right? But so have you seen some of those shifts? If you look at it today, is there a change happening in B2B research to build ongoing engagement with the specific populations so that you have them available for you or your clients? Or are we still kind of in the ad hoc world overall?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think for our business and the way that we work, which is predominantly project-based and ad hoc, we do have some longitudinal work, but the vast majority of the work we do is around a question that comes in, a strategic question. And then, like you were saying earlier, it may be that someone wants to do a big quantitative survey with an audience, and in practice, you can only do 10 depth interviews with that particular audience. So we'd always design the project from the ground up based around that particular ask. But yeah, in terms of how things have shifted, I think, well, when I first started, Catty was a big thing, actually speaking to people on the phone. I think it's kind of come 360. Obviously, online is still a big part of what we do, but more and more we have some element of telephone involved. We're actually speaking to someone. Now, that might be recruit to web, where someone's calling someone up, recruiting them, talking them through the screener, and then staying on the phone with them whilst they go through the survey. It could be expert networks to get really niche respondents. It could be our Catty Centre that we've got in Manchester in the UK, which we tend to use when we're doing, say, customer experience or in-depth interviews that require like specialist B2B interviewers. So yeah, it feels like there's this sort of arc that's come back where phone has always played a part, but it feels like it's becoming one of those things where it just gives us that confidence in the data.
Yeah. I think even in consumer research, the advent of voice has come back around, right?
Yep.
Now, and that's just driven by the technology, ubiquity of the technology. So no surprise. Although I just this week saw a technology, an AI that duplicates in real time voice and face, and it's like, man, we are in so much trouble. And so as we go through this process, we'll go back to voice. That's a great way to confirm, and until AI clones the voice. So anyway, we don't need to go more into that. That's like the stuff of nightmares. But
Yeah, absolutely. I think the general trend is we've just got to keep experimenting, seeing what's out there. There's new things every single day at the moment. And yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of trial and error, figuring out what works, what doesn't. But yeah, pace of change is crazy.
Yeah. Well, as one of the leaders in B2B research, I think setting that pace of change and innovation, fortunately or unfortunately, it's on your plate to do. So without giving away any secrets, what are the types of things that you're excited about, that you guys are either have implemented or experimenting with to keep driving those best practices forward?
Yeah. So the biggest, we've always had to innovate in the B2B world. Quite often it's been methodology innovation, and like the way we design projects, thinking about, how do we track a brand when we can only speak to 15 people qualitatively. But I think those challenges have really helped sharpen our offering and the solutions that we have for clients. The thing I'm really excited about is, so as I mentioned earlier, we're part of Merkle now. Merkle has got a lot of heritage in first-party data, experience management. There's a team of, I think, 1,000 plus analysts and data scientists who are developing new AI solutions every day. And we have the massive benefit of being able to tap into that, which is fantastic. And I think, if you play this out, I guess it's difficult to say what 3 years' time, 5 years' time is going to look like, but if you play these trends out, I could see a world where, client side, you do have primary research still. I'm sure speaking to humans is still going to be a part of the suite of research tools, but that will be augmented with synthetic data, synthetic profiles. I'm sure there'll still be presentations and workshops to clients about research findings, but I think clients will probably be interacting more frequently with chatbots. In our most recent survey, what did such and such think? Or what's the most important thing to network infrastructure architects, that kind of thing. So I just think there's obviously a lot of disruption coming, but I think this is going to be the biggest type of disruption to the research industry that we'll have seen.
I tend to agree. I think process will be disrupted significantly.
Yeah.
Need, not so much.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Actually, I think need is only going to increase.
Yeah.
But how we do it, we're going to be pretty darn flexible about that.
Yep.
Because needing to make smart decisions isn't going to go away. So I think you're bullish on the future, as am I. I'm just not bullish. I'm glad I don't own a tab house.
Yes.
Right? Something, coding. Glad I'm not a coder.
Yes.
Yeah,
absolutely. I think it's always, again, going back to how we talk to our clients, we always say that we're in the business of delivering research that delivers impact. So the tools that we have, or the tools that we employ to deliver that, have always changed, and would change from project to project for clients as well. So that, I think that will always remain, delivering insight that drives impact and outcomes for the client. The tool set that we have to do it is just going to continue to evolve, but it's just going to evolve at a way rapider pace than it has done previously.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Fundamentally, that doesn't change. So clients need an answer to a business question to make a business decision. Those who win on the supplier side are the ones who help them achieve that best. That's the moving target piece, right? That's the flexibility piece, is that definition of best. But now that said, there certainly are nuances. Are you seeing any shifts in client needs or expectations changing during all of this disruptive period that we're in?
Do you mean in terms of the questions that they're asking, or
Maybe a little bit of both. So what are there trends that you see in the type of issues they're trying to figure out? Certainly that would be interesting. Um, and outside of the trust issue we already talked about, are there some other expectations that are emerging that um, are maybe surprising for how the engagements have gone in the past?
yes, we're getting asked questions about, hey, could we do something synthetic with this? I think people have always have asked about the latest trend, like what could we do? Is there a way to do something like that on our particular project or on our tracker? So we get asked questions about that. We've been able to say yes to things more that we wouldn't have been able to say yes to in the past. So let's take a project that would typically have taken 7 to 8 weeks. And there's really no way to shorten it. We could maybe shave a week off. If let's say that's a core project and the client's like, we really need some kind of insights at week 3, that would just like not have been possible in the past. Whereas now we can use AI to get summaries of transcripts, views of themes, indicative quotes to share quick turn insights. We still do the thorough analysis at the back end, but it means that there's the ability to share more insights earlier on. And I think that's going to be one of the key things with AI and synthetic versus like online telephone is that trade-off. So like, yes, I need something quick. I know it's not going to be perfect, but it'll give me some insights early on.
So tell me the way I've thought about this, I just haven't thought about it specifically for B2B, but I suspect it will follow the same path as consumer. My bet is that we're going to get to a place where early stage ideation, testing, hypothesis testing, those type of things, I think that will go synthetic. When it is not important to quantify, but to have, reliable direction, right? Better than a thumb in the air.
Exactly.
So, then build off of that. Now we need to test hypothesis, with a real audience. And yes, we'll do that faster and probably in a much more interactive way than currently than we do. And that whole promise that we had of agile research, remember that was just the buzz term, years ago. We will be there. It will be very agile by its very nature of that rapid turnaround of information, even though the data collection may take us longer.
Yes.
But the turnaround will make that much more agile and iterative, which should drive better outcomes. So does that, I think that certainly if you think about the CPG world, it's pretty clear that we're heading that direction for consumer. Is that what you're seeing in B2B as well?
I think exactly that. Yeah. You could imagine with, in like a classic old segmentation study that would have had like a qual phase up front to like flesh out the inputs to the segmentation. You could see that would be done with synthetic in a day or two. And then you move into some kind of measurement. You may then have the segments, you might be tying those to first party data or other types of data to be able to target them and enrich them and so on.
Okay. So go back to, I'm sure that you've experimented with this, as have I, and just off the shelf AI, you are the decision maker in a Fortune 100 CPG company in the insight space, right? Right, and create this persona, just to test out some BS idea that I have. What's missing in any of that is that human element, though.
Yeah.
So it's probably easy enough to scour LinkedIn and here's those things. So do you think that as we go into that world where the ability to do those type of things from a profile information will be pretty easy, but that decision-making component, that human element that drives the decision-making, will still be a critical piece of IP that that companies like B2B International, even Merkle and Dentsu, will be leaning into to make that that's where the impact will come from, is through that, understand the emotional component of that.
Yeah, exactly. And you're just building on that concept development example you used earlier. obviously AI is just going to get smarter and smarter. So what I might be about to say could be redundant in a matter of days. I don't know. But
Right.
you imagine
right.
you've got a synthetic panel. It knows your target audience and what drives their decision, the kind of things they're looking for from a product. You place in front of them 2 or 3 concepts, and the features resonate with this synthetic audience, or there's like a percentage uptake that if we launch this, it will go into market. What that might be missing is the real truth of like, well, could I shift the incumbent with this particular offer? Is that person really going to take the risk to try and convince their C-suite on this offer, which might be 20% better than the solution that they already have, but the headaches of changing or the risk to them professionally, personally, for making the wrong decision, is that kind of thing going to be factored in to that type of synthetic research? I'm sure, yes, eventually, but I think having a human element is always going to be really important.
Now, being part of Merkle, that does have a lot of first-party data assets, have you been synthesizing those to build out, broader profiles, to have more of what used to be considered secondary research, right? But to really flesh out these things, that it's not just what we've asked, but it's what we know already on these populations through other the IT decision maker. Maybe you're working with a router company, but we also have lots of buying behavior on their other IT purchases.
Yes.
And yes,
exactly that. Yeah. So there's things we can do like loads of data points about media consumption habits and things like that, where you can extrapolate that out across the whole buying universe. And we might have only spoken to a sample of it, but we've got the data for like a large proportion of that audience. So yeah, the synthesis of primary research data with first-party data, that's just going to keep growing and growing. It does also mean most instances that can then be targetable through media as well. In the consumer space, so when obviously we're B2B specialists, but there's also consumer research that we do. We have the ability to tie together some of the really big consumer panels to that first-party data. So we can actually conduct the research with those panels and then stitch the data together, and it just enriches the insights that we have.
Okay, cool. So you kind of effectively have your own DSP and kind
of restricted to the US at the moment as well, for because of data protection laws and so on. Not the kind of thing that could be possible in Europe.
Oh, sorry, European listeners. That's used to be. Remember the movie Minority Report?
Yeah,
with Tom Cruise, and the scene of him walking through the mall, and there's all the very personalized advertising that was occurring.
Yes,
right? I used to use that as an example of, well, then we called it big data, right? It's like that's the here's where we're going, is to that world where we are delivering the right message to the right person at the right time,
exactly.
based upon this hoovering up of all of the available data, without realizing that there had to be some type of technology to actually make that happen. And that's what AI has done.
Yep.
While also knowing, but only in the US, not necessarily in the UK, right? And maybe not in California, but in Kentucky,
and probably most states eventually, as it's rolling out state by state, isn't it? But
yeah, which is just it's just interesting to think purely philosophically. Think, boy, things changed so fast, and I didn't see that coming. But then you step back from this. But Minority Report's 20 years old, right? So we did see it coming. These were foreseeable, not events, but a progression. We just didn't know exactly how that was going to manifest. And I still hope we don't get to the psychics that are, the pre-crime thing.
The focus group of the future, perhaps.
I do have flying cars though. So anyway, does that, as a leader in the business, how do you deal with that, with knowing, okay, there's a reasonable set of paths that we can imagine where these things are going to go, variables, but we don't know exactly how that's going to play out. How do you manage that as a leader?
I think it kind of goes back to what I was mentioning earlier, which is this kind of to some extent trial and error, but it's more about just being really open-minded and leaning into the change. I think as an industry, there's always been innovators and disruptors in our industry, but I think historically, on the whole, companies have maybe tried to play it safe. Kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier with the trust factor. It's like, I know if I design this project in this way that we've done in the past and we can reach these people, it's going to deliver the results that this client wants. So, let's not add risk to it. But disruption is happening so fast, we have to lean into it. And it feels like it's at the point where, if you can imagine, like, what would be the ideal way that a client will be consuming, like gathering and consuming insights, you could brainstorm a number of ideas and all of them will probably be possible. As long as they're within the law, there will be some way of making that possible. So I think it's just a case of leaning into it, trying things. We're working with lots of different partners who have really smart ideas, seeing how we can apply that to B2B research. So yeah, daunting, but exciting.
What's one of the challenges that you've had to deal with, and not COVID, because we all got that one, right? Set that aside. So another challenge from a leader standpoint, where something has occurs like, oh, well, crap, I didn't see that coming. And how you've adapted through that. Because you didn't know what to lean into until it happened, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah. Do you mean like a technology challenge or any kind of challenge?
Just anything. So we're kind of segueing into kind of you as a leader and sharing that with other listeners or leaders that are going, oh, what do I do? Things are changing so fast, right? So this is the wisdom imparting part of the conversation, Matt.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges the same with any company. One of the challenges we've often faced is there's just certain markets and certain types of clients that where obviously this was exacerbated in COVID, but where the work just disappears. We might have work that's about to start or that's in progress, and there might be something that affects a particular industry, and the work just completely dries up. We've been really, really lucky with the fact that we focus on B2B, and B2B goes across all verticals. So whenever we've seen that with a certain industry, we've tended to see an uptick in another industry. The tech industry goes in cycles where sometimes it will be boom, sometimes it will be really, really tough. So that's always a bit of a challenge, particularly in a project-based industry. That's actually quite a challenge. In 3 months' time, what projects will we have? And that has been a constant headache for however many years. Thankfully, they all come in, but yeah, we don't know what we're going to be working on in 3, 4, 5 months' time. So making sure our proposition's up to date, that we deliver great work for clients, that they trust the work that we do. Because if we don't do that, then those projects will stop coming in.
Yeah. Well, and resource allocation appropriately to that. The at Rockhopper, now we're just going to share war stories for a second. We did mostly B2B research, and our specialization sector was financial services. And it was great. We were kicking ass and taking names until the Great Recession hit.
Yeah.
And what the eye-opening experience for me was, I'm the CEO of this cool startup company. We're online B2B research, and we're just doing all these cool things, and we're growing like crazy until the recession hit. And so that we were at 4 million in 2007, right? 1.5 million in 2008. Same exact number of projects. So it's all commiserating with you, right? That's an additional in a ad hoc business, and at that point, very people driven.
Yep.
Right, effectively. That's when I realized, well, this doesn't make sense. There's something wrong. I want to be a tech CEO. But we're at technology. So now to my point, are you are you enabling now technology as a benefit to help even out some of those challenges when we still have a very ad hoc, also very people driven, but the process now we're not carrying as much overhead. It's easier to navigate some of those things, just more agility and flexibility organizationally to deal with some of those peaks and valleys.
yeah, the tech that we have is, we've always sought to evolve that, and the tools that team have. And again, on the topic of AI, that's just going to keep increasing. Enterprise licenses to the big AI tools, and what that does for being able to interrogate data, for being able to get like the first drafts of reports together. Again, still coming back to the fact that we want to have a human eye on that. One thing that we've really like prided ourselves on in the company throughout the entirety of, like, from when I first started, is giving younger team members, newer team members, the chance to really stretch themselves and push themselves. And that's something that we've always done. We still continue to do. We've got a really long tenure of staff within our organization. And I think that's going to be increasingly important, particularly with the tools that teams are going to have available, because if you just rely on AI, you're not sharpening your critical thinking. It's like I always say to our team, if you want to sharpen your point of view on something, write something about it, because you really have to think through what you understand about it, what your point of view is on it, how you articulate it. So if you just draft something in ChatGPT and not going through that process of being like the critical thinking and sharpening up your point of view. So yes, it's that kind of stuff's really going to help speed things up, but we've got to make sure that the people are still using their brains, essentially.
Yes. Did you see the study that came out recently of the
IQ
it was
drop.
pretty scary. The one that's making us dumber. Yeah. Now, so you brought up a good point. Let's kind of go into that as we move into the closing parts here. In the beginning, as you were telling your story, I said how interesting that is for somebody to be with the same company for 20 years. Now, you've just mentioned that tenure is not necessarily unusual. So what are the cultural elements that built that? Because that is unusual to hear people staying in organizations that long. So how have you built a culture that retains people while giving them, obviously you're an example of that. You started, as a lowly interviewer, right? And what's that like?
I think it comes down to, it sounds a bit cheesy, but just empowering the team to do really good work. So if someone feels like they might be a research analyst, but if they feel like they can really get on their feet and present a few sections of a debrief to a client, and they feel comfortable, then let's give them the opportunity to do that, and so they can strengthen that muscle and develop. Pushing people, but giving them the platform to stretch themselves, I think has been that's what's really helped me in my career, and the leaders who I worked underneath at the start of my career, and then I think other, like, small cultural things, like whenever we would have a training session within the team, we'd usually get some of the junior team members to do the training session. So they'd work with one of the senior teams to craft the materials, but then they would present that to the team. And we've always historically had a really kind of flat structure culture, rather than a hierarchical one. I think that's probably, those are probably the main factors, really. Just giving people a platform to do really good work. There's just obviously with the long tenures, everybody knows each other really well as well. I think that's probably it.
Looking now into the future and retaining that cultural foundation that you've talked about, what do you think is the dominant skill or trait that will help drive overall success in the era of robotic overlords, or hopefully colleagues, versus overlords. But yes.
I think critical thinking, I think adaptability, I think curiosity, perhaps is the biggest one, thinking about it. The ability to ask the right questions, the ability to think about ways in which we can do things differently. I'd say those three things are probably going to be the most important.
Okay. Yeah, I would tend to agree. All right, what has you most excited for the future? What can you, let's say, the remainder of the year, now that we're kind of midway through? So
I guess I've already spoken a bit about the stuff that's going on with B2B International and Merkle, the fact we can tap into the data scientists there, and we've spoken a lot about AI. One thing that I'm really excited about, we have, so when we were first brought into Dentsu, it was because Dentsu was building out a kind of B2B powerhouse, as it were, end to end. And we've sort of launched the next evolution of that this year, Dentsu B2B. And it kind of brings together media, creative, insight, CXM, all B2B specialists. So all people who live and breathe B2B, who are passionate about it. And yeah, that's really exciting for me, because as with all researchers, the biggest kick you get out of research is when it makes an impact. And with that sort of end-to-end Dentsu B2B proposition, our research gets to make a direct impact on things like an experience transformation program, or measuring the impact of media, or a new brand architecture that the creative team are working on. So yeah, just really excited that there's lots going on about B2B at the moment, and it kind of chimes with our passion here.
Very cool. So it is integrated. It's not kind of the, we've seen these models in the past,
Yes.
and looking back, but they never meshed.
Yes.
They were not really integrated. It was just a holding company, effectively.
Right. Yeah.
So Dentsu's learned from that experience and is like, nope, we're going to unlock value. You're part of the team.
Yeah, and it's kind of evolved over the last few years, and then refined. But yes, it's global. There's teams all over the world, here in North America, EMEA, APAC, in Japan, and we work together all the time. So we have weekly calls with our colleagues who are in those different practices, who are all B2B specialists. We work on joint thought leadership. We work on new kind of joined up B2B solutions. So yeah, that's kind of why it's quite exciting as well, like stitching research in with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Very cool. All right. So that's now what keeps you up at night.
Kind of goes back to what we were talking about. What we've been talking about for most of it is what is the impact of AI going to be in 5 years' time. I think we know you can kind of get a sense of what it's going to look like in terms of how research is done, or the tools that we'll have, and how clients will use that. But what will the agency model look like for research in 5 years' time, if that is the case? And yeah, that's just something we have to keep thinking about and seeing how that evolves with the adoption of all these tools and processes.
Yeah. There's a model. I'll send you a link afterwards, and for the audience, look up service as software. It is a framework developed by, I forget the name, one of the consultancies, right? But it's a really interesting framework that I think actually is probably pretty applicable to where we wind up overall, which is, and like we've been talking about, if it's process driven, kind of low value add, but it's necessary to create something, that's probably going to be, go the way of the dodo, right? But anything requires expertise, creativity, intuition, critical thinking, imagination, which is usually, if kind of boil it down to anything that's kind of the what aspect of things, yeah, that's all going to be AI. So what? That's obviously, we start getting into these human element components that are necessary, but more importantly, the now what. That's probably going to be a hybrid, in my view, right? We're certainly going to be AI that can give us predictive information, but we have to be able to really trust our guts, I think, on that. So isn't that interesting? I guess my bottom line view, see if you agree with this, is that increasingly the human element is going to be more intuitive in many ways. That magical thing that happens is we're processing information and thinking and making decisions, right? While our AI collaborators are going to be kind of the backup to make sure that we're not being totally stupid, that there's information to validate it.
And there's the paradox as well, Lenny, which is, in 10 years' time, what will that intuition look like if everybody has been using AI tools throughout their entire career?
Yes. Yeah. Now and it's a good point, because I'm not sure how I feel about that. As a father, I don't mind saying, I have not allowed my kids to utilize AI tools. Um, the Very purposely. And even I resisted for a while because of my own concerns for staying sharp.
Yep.
So I get that. And I think that's a social issue we have not figured out, let alone a business issue.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting as we navigate that. Thoughts? Do you have children? Are you
I do not know, so I don't have that concern at the moment. But
okay? All right. So
I've been using
all right.
AI a lot myself, so maybe I'm making myself dumber. But
I don't think so, based on this conversation, Matt, at all.
it's very kind.
I suspect that you will have a client come forward at some point, maybe in the ed tech space, wanting to do research on understanding,
Yeah.
where are we going with all this? So, Matt, what have we not covered that you wanted to cover? Is there anything that you wanted to make sure that we talked about or bring up that we just didn't get to naturally in this conversation?
I think we've pretty much covered the key points, Lenny. Yeah, I think there was the hot topics we've spoken about, of course. And yeah, we've spoken a lot about B2B, something I'm very passionate about, as a wider marketing discipline, as well as the organization. Yeah, it's been a great conversation.
For me as well. I can't think of a better way to wrap up a Friday afternoon. So I appreciate you taking time, even though you're still midday and I'm at the end of the day.
Yeah,
Still,
I've still got a little way to go yet.
yeah. Where can people find you?
I'm on LinkedIn. That's probably the best place.
Okay. All right. And any parting thoughts? Anything else you want to just get out there before we call it a day?
I think that's it from my side. Yeah, nothing I can think of. Maybe it's that Friday afternoon fog starting to drift in.
All right, Matt, thank you. I
Thank you.
enjoyed this conversation very much as well. Hopefully our listeners did too, as we dived into the depths of B2B research. Thank you so much. Best of luck, continued success in
Thank
all
you.
that you do. And with that, I think we will wrap. I want to give a shout out to Bridget, our producer, to Big Bad Audio, our mixers, and to make us all sound good, and to our sponsors. And that's it for this edition of the Greenbook Podcast. Everybody be well. Take care. Bye-bye.